I have more information on Lost in Space after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and today we're talking about the new Lost in Space that's coming up soon on Netflix. A few days ago, I read a couple of articles and seen some things that have given me some new insight on what they're going to be doing on the show. First of all, the Robinson family. A lot of people have been wondering how it is that they're a mixed-race family when both parents are quite obviously Caucasian. Well, according to the backstory, Maureen Robinson is on her second marriage to John Robinson and had a child by her first marriage who was Judy. Then in the second marriage had Penny and Will with John Robinson. Now, according to the story that they have released so far, the marriage that John and Maureen have is not the best in the world. In fact, they were close to divorce and decided that going to this new planet would be the equivalent of, starting a new family or whatever that some people use to try to avoid divorcing. And Maureen does not want to divorce a second time, apparently. So there's going to be that tension there, and there's going to be the rivalry between Judy and Penny as being, kind of daughters of different fathers. And then Will is going to feel kind of neglected, and that apparently is where, after they crash on the planet, he discovers the robot. We'll talk about the robot in a minute. Now, Dr. Smith, the other thing people ask a whole lot about. Parker Posey is going to be playing Dr. Smith, a woman in place of a man that played the part before, Jonathan Harris. What turns out is that the showrunner, by the name of Zach Estrin, who is the showrunner for the new Lost in Space, actually knew Jonathan Harris and had a talk with him about his idea for doing a retreatment of Lost in Space many years ago before Jonathan Harris passed away. And Jonathan Harris said, "No one can play Dr. Smith but me." And he took him at his word with that and thought, really, even though Gary Oldman did a pretty good job in the movie, otherwise the movie really tanked, they really needed to go from a completely different direction if you weren't going to have Jonathan Harris play Dr. Smith. And he was the only man that probably could play Dr. Smith the way Dr. Smith needed to be played. So in finding a way that you could have the character preserved but have someone that could play it fresh, how more opposite can you do than to make the character a woman? And that's the reason they picked Parker Posey for this job, partly. Also, just she's a great actress. But she's going to continue having the conniving but lovable dichotomy that Dr. Smith always had. Because the whole deal is that if Dr. Smith had been like he was in the first 2 or 3 episodes of the original series, they would have eventually thrown him out an airlock, and that would have been the end of him. In fact, Irwin Allen did not expect Dr. Smith to last beyond the first 2 or 3 episodes. They would find some, planet to leave him on and go about their way. But Jonathan Harris was a very clever fellow and rewrote his own part to the point to where he became the most popular character. Still, the way this show is going to work is going to be less with the Robinson family, although that's really what they're focusing on, and more on how the relationship between Will and Dr. Smith and the robot work out. Now, the robot. This robot is actually, instead of the one that comes with them, which somebody wrote in an article recently that he was kind of a cross between a ceiling fan, a kitchen appliance, and a vacuum cleaner, will look more humanoid. Now, what we have seen in the trailers and such may not be his final form, because apparently this robot can reconfigure himself. So we don't know what he's going to look like, or if he looked like something different when he was first encountered. But Will finds him on the planet after the ship crashes and befriends him. And because, once again, he feels kind of isolated, he's just kind of made a new friend. And that's how this robot is. But everybody else is not quite certain whether he's a friend or a foe, really, and a little bit leery of him. Similar to the way that they were leery of the original robot in the first few episodes of the original series. So that should be an interesting dynamic there on Will and the robot, and probably Dr. Smith is going to figure in on that, because why not? No indication of whether there's going to be any alliterative insults, bubble-headed booby, tin-plated terror, or things like that. But, you never know. They are going to play it a little darker. It's been said that the people who have seen the previews or the pre-screenings of this have said that it's somewhere between The Expanse and Battlestar Galactica, although one negative review said that it was more like between The Martian and Prometheus, with a problem that Ridley Scott has had in some of his movies of not really telling you why the characters are motivated to do what they do. And so there is something to be said for characterization here. They say that it's a little bit off, but if what we're looking for in Lost in Space is kind of a ride and getting to like these characters, the jury's still out on that. And I'd like to see just how these characters interact with each other and what we think about them. Now, they got one strike against them. I liked the vacuum cleaner, blender, ceiling fan looking robot. So some people are saying, well, the humanoid robot is more like robots in movies now. And that really wasn't anything that struck my fancy. But we'll see what we see on this. If they can make it work, if they can make the relationships work, I think they have this, because that's really what this show is about relationships and how you get along in a strange place and an uncomfortable arrangement already. We've already mentioned that there's going to be more families. Apparently the mothership goes through a black hole and several ships are crashed on this planet, and they meet some other people. So it suggests perhaps that Dr. Smith was on one of the other ships. And in fact, they have said that in order to be one of the families that went on this big thing to the Paradise Alpha Centauri, was that they had to pass certain tests, psychological and such, in order to make them worthy to take the trip and not be left with the poor folks who stay on Earth and die. So we have a feeling that Dr. Smith is kind of cheated to get her place on one of these ships. That Don West, who is now not a major but kind of a pirate type of pilot, also is kind of brought in not because he's one of the ideal, but just because he knows how to fly a ship. So there's going to be that angle in there as well, where West and Smith are going to have something in common. I'm kind of interested to see how that works out as well. I'm interested to see how close to The Expanse, which we'll be talking about later, and The Martian this comes to, and how much like the original Lost in Space this comes to. Does it catch the spirit? What do you think? Are you looking forward to this show, or have you already written it off? I'd like to hear what you have to say in the comments. Please let me know. And also, if you could click a like button and a subscribe, that would be very nice as well. And if you ring the bell on that, or whatever you do to the bell, that'll let you know when I put my next video out. And that way you don't miss a bit. Until next time, don't go far.